All right, so what exactly are we going to do and how exactly are we going to do it? Each week, the amount of work that you do, the type of work that you do, and the way you do your work is going to look really similar to all of the other weeks of the semester. So if you like consistency, if you like predictability, you have totally plopped yourself in the right course for you. Each week is going to begin with me sending you a really short video announcement, 5 minutes or less, in which I review the week's work, give you some specific instructions related to things I want to make sure you're doing or avoiding, and hopefully giving you some tips and tricks for getting that week's work done successfully. I recommend watching those videos earlier rather than later in the week so that you have a sense of what it is that you'll be contending with that week, and then you can organize all of the other aspects of your life appropriately so that you can get our work done with as little stress and headache and frustration as possible. Most of the work that we do this semester is going to come in the form of thought primers. And I'll go over thought primers in much greater detail during the second week of our course and explain to you exactly what they are and how to complete them successfully. You're going to have 2 thought primers a week, and essentially each one is going to involve you watching some lectures in which I review some concepts or explain some concepts and do some skill demonstrations, and you're going to take copious notes as you're watching those lectures, because another part of the thought primer is going to involve you solving logic problems out of your book using the skills and the concepts that you will have learned about in the lectures. And those problems that you do out of the book are going to fall into 2 different sets. There's going to be one set of problems that you do that you self-correct using the tools that I provide for you in the thought primer. And there's another set of logic problems that you're going to complete that I correct. Okay, you get 1 point for the problems that you self-correct, and you get 1 point for the problems that I correct. Now, when you turn your thought primer into me, I'm going to look at all those problems. And if everything looks tip-top, 100% correct, I'm going to send you back a note and say, check it out. You got 100% on the thought primer, 2 points, because everything that you did looks correct. Sometimes, even when you've done all of your work correctly, I'll send you back a note that says, hey, I notice you're solving these problems this way, or I notice that you're using this method for approaching this kind of a problem. Here's an alternative that you might consider. Okay, so you always want to look for the comments that I send back to you in your thought primers, because sometimes I'll be sending you helpful hints, even though you scored 100% on the thought primer. Now, what's almost certain to happen is that sometimes you're going to turn in thought primers and you're not going to have 100% on them. You will have not gotten one of the 2 points, or maybe either one of the 2 points, for your self-corrected or the problems that I corrected. But no worries, because what's going to happen in that case is I'm going to send you back a note with your thought primer that says, hey, I want you to go back and I want you to look at these problems again. And when you look at them this time, I want you to be thinking this. And I want you to try to approach them with this method instead of the method you were using. And you'll work on those problems some more. And then once you've got them revised, you'll send them back to me. And hopefully at that point I say, all right, tip top, everything looks 100% cool. You're ready to move on. But I might look at those corrected problems or those revised problems that you send to me and say, okay, you're getting closer. Now what I want you to do is I want you to think about this. And now go work on those problems again. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're getting 100% on each and every one of your thought primers by continuing to work on the problems with my advice until you've solved them. And if what I'm saying back to you in your thought primers doesn't make a whole lot of sense, or it just doesn't help you in the way that it needs to, that's when you send me an email and say, like, can we meet over Zoom so that you can show me what it is that you're talking about here? And that's when I set up the Zoom meeting for us. Exciting stuff. Okay, so you got these 2 thought primers per week, 2 points each. They're going to be due on Thursdays and Sundays. If you find yourself unable to meet the deadlines, you just shoot me an email that says, like, hey, life happened this week and I'm not going to make the Sunday deadline, but I'm going to try to get this in by Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. You just don't want to get far behind on your thought primers, because the thought primers are what are going to allow you to learn what it is that you need to know and how to do in order to complete all of your other assignments in the course successfully. You really want to prioritize these thought primers. I can't emphasize enough how powerful they are in preparing you for the other work that you have to do. All right. Embedded in each thought primer is going to be a quiz. It's a 10-question quiz, around 10 questions. I don't think there's any that are more than 11 questions, and I think there's only a couple that have like 8 questions in them. And all the questions are multiple choice. Okay, so you'll open up that quiz that's embedded in your thought primer. You'll run through those 10 questions. You'll select those the answers that you think are correct for each one of those questions, and then you'll submit it and go back into it to see which questions you answered correctly and which questions you answered incorrectly. And then you can open that exact same quiz up again, and it'll be the same problems in the same order, and you just have to make sure that you mark the questions you got correctly the first time the same way, and that you don't mark the questions you got incorrectly the first time the same way, and then you can resubmit that quiz. If when you're looking at that quiz, you find yourself just absolutely stumped on a particular problem, you can't figure out why you got it wrong, or you can't figure out what the right answer is, that's when you shoot me the email and you say like, hey, I'm totally stumped on this, totally confused. Can you explain this to me or answer this question for me? Can we set up a Zoom where we can go over this together? But again, your goal is you've got these multiple attempts, open book, open note, unlimited time on these quizzes. You want to make sure you're striving as hard as you can for 100%. Why not? All right. The other part of the work that we do this semester is going to be in the form of argument constructions. I know this is going to be disappointing to you, but there are no essays in this class. I'm sorry. We're not going to be doing any researching. We're not going to be writing thousands of words. Instead, we're going to do these assignments called argument constructions. It's not really worth going into much detail here, what exactly those are all about, but we will go into lots of detail about that when those assignments come due. So you've got these three areas of the course that you're going to do your work in: thought primers, quizzes, and these argument constructions. Again, the thought primer work is what is going to allow you to learn what you need to know and know how to do in order to answer your quiz questions correctly and in order to complete your argument constructions successfully. So prioritize thought primers. Don't let yourself get behind on those each week. All right. No mandatory Zoom discussions. We don't have a designated time where we meet as a class. I don't have any requirements that you have to sit in a Zoom room with me for some amount of time during the semester. That said, it's super, super, super common for me to be individually with students or with small groups of students to go over stuff that we're working on. That is super common. So when you find yourself wanting to just check in, make sure that you're understanding things correctly, or get some help on some assignment that you're working on or a problem that you're working on, you just shoot me an email and say like, hey, can we do a Zoom session at this day on this time? Finally, the last thing I want you to know here is that the modules in Canvas are super important for us. In fact, I think you can do virtually everything you need to do this semester out of the modules. Okay, so when you go into Canvas and you click the modules button, you'll see it's going to bring up a whole bunch of modules. For us, what'll appear, or for you, what appears each week are the week's current module and the next week's module. Okay, so you can see here on my screen, I've got a whole bunch of weeks up because I can't make them go away. But your screen likely has just weeks 1 and 2 there, okay? And each week you're going to see me posting the next week's module and the module the successive module. It's not because I'm expecting that you're going to want to work ahead. It's just that I think students like knowing what's coming up the next week so that they can fit their coursework into all of the other things they got going on in their lives. When you click on the week's module, you're going to see it takes you to links for each of the week's thought primers. And when you click on a link for the thought primer, like this one here, once you're on this page, you're where you need to be to get all of your week's work done. Okay, so you can see here's a thought primer. It's got your video lectures where you're going to be watching me explain some concepts, and then you can see down here you've got a little bit of reading to do out of your book, and then you've got some problems for you to solve out of your book. And once you've gotten those written down, you can watch these videos and self-correct those problems. And once you got incorrect on the first go-round, you just scratch out your wrong answer and you write in the correct answer. Unless you don't understand from my explanation in the video why the correct answer is what it is. In that case, what do? Yes, you shoot me an email and say, I watched your video explanation of this problem and I still don't get it. Help me. Okay, so you'll keep working through these self-corrections, and then you get to the bottom here and you'll see, well, here are the problems that you're going to send to me that I'm going to take a look at and tell you whether or not they're correct or incorrect. And then here's a link to your quiz, your 10-question quiz for the week. All right, so that's kind of what each week is going to look like, actually. Really similar to what you see on your screen here. Next up is how your grade is going to be calculated. And this next video is super important because the way your course grade is calculated for this course is very different from any of your other courses. So you want to make sure that you watch that video really carefully and ask me any questions that you have about what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and how you're going to be graded for doing it.